Welcome to Women and Resistance, a powerful podcast where we honor the courage, resilience, and revolutionary spirits of women across the globe. Hosted by Ayafubere Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, we uncover untold stories of defiance against systemic oppression, whether colonialism, racism, sexism, or economic injustice. From historic icons like Winnie Mandela and Fannie Lou Hamer to today's trailblazers, we shine a light upon those shaping a more just world. This is a call to honor the past, embrace the present, and build an empowered future. Yes, greetings, and welcome to another episode of Women and Resistance. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and Women and Resistance, for those of us that are new, it's a podcast where we highlight the roles of women who have helped further the cause of the Black consciousness, Black people, and the Black experience generally. Tonight, we're going to highlight another of our greats, and we all heard the story of reparation, which has been the mainstay of the story of the last week. What if I told you decades before this became a drumbeat, someone, a Black woman in 1972 in particular, actually stood up in a convention and raised the question of reparation? For that, we're going to go to my co-host, who, before going into character, is, as you can see the name there, Ayafubere Eneli Esquire. She's going to be playing the role of Queen Mother Moore. And so, in particular, the woman we're going to be talking about today is none other than the Queen Mother Moore. You're welcome.
Good evening. I'm very happy to be with you this evening.
Good evening. Yes, Queen Mother Moore. Many have heard the name. Some would know what she stands for. Others might be lost as to what's so special about her. Could you give us a quick background? Yes. We're living in the age and times of...
We are going to start at the beginning because I am very happy to be with you today and to have this conversation. You know, I talked in front of many audiences.
Uh-huh.
I lived almost 100 years and I dedicated my life to the advancement of our people. But we must not call ourselves Black people. We are Africans. So when you say a Black woman, or this is a program that you do for the advancement of Black people, no. It is for Africans. That is who we are.
I stand corrected.
Absolutely. But I understand, because when we talk about this cause of reparations, there is so much that was taken from us, that was stripped from us. And there is a reason why they called us Negroes. And then even when we started to say Black, but Negro, Black, is it not the same thing in a different language?
Language, yes.
But where is Black? The Chinese, when they come here, are Chinese Americans. So even when I talk to my son, you know Malcolm X, he called me Queen Mother. He said, he would say, oh, Afro-Americans. I said, we are African Americans. We are African. And I renounced my citizenship of this country because we need our own land. My question to all of you listening, have you heard of the new Republic of Africa? If you say you are someone now of African descent, you are an African who is fighting for our liberation in this United States of America, and you have not heard of the new Republic of Africa, then I must tell you, you have to go back to the books. You have to study. So let me start at the very beginning of my life anyway. So it is a quite interesting life, if I must say so. I was born, Audley Adeline Moore, and I was born on July 27th in New Iberia, Louisiana. I was born into the aftermath of slavery. Not its end, the aftermath. And my father, oh, you had never seen such a beautiful man in your whole life. But my father, he was a product of rape. His father was a white man. Now my mother, beautiful black skin. So when you see this skin I have, even this complexion I have, this is part of why they owe us reparations. Because I do not have the beautiful dark skin of my mother. You know, I tried to get an afro. I could not, my hair would not grow into an afro. So I wear my crown. Because against our will, they came after us. Do you know that these really ultra-wealthy white men, sometimes they would get black men to marry very beautiful black women for the purposes of having access to those black women. And they would throw these parties in their mansions and just bring black women to defile them. They would have their white women who they put on so-called pedestals and still sneak out of their homes to come and look for us. We must know our history. We are not free. We were not free in 1898 when I was born, and even all these years after my death, my transition from this physical form, we are still not free. We are still an oppressed people in America. But I came into this world not to accept that oppression, but to challenge it. And I came from a long line of fighters. Let me tell you a story from my childhood. You know, before they really they instituted the black codes. Black people and white people somehow were getting along. And my brother was playing with a white friend, a white boy. And something happened, and the next thing, the white boy's father came out and horsewhipped my brother because of an issue that the two boys had. And my brother came home and told my father. And my father, well, he went right up to that white man's house and he horsewhipped him right back. Yes, he did. My father was Saint Cyr Moore and my mother was Ella Johnson Moore. And my father at one point was a deputy sheriff. He was a black man in authority in the South. We know that this meant danger, it meant tension. He owned businesses. And at one point, a white man accused him of stealing a sack of flour. And based on that white man's testimony alone, he was convicted. Never mind that we had more resources, had no reason to steal a bag of flour. And they sent my father to jail. There were many lessons. As a child, I remember hearing these awful sounds, and I wanted to peek out the window. My grandmother held us down, and we're just kind of looking, and we see a black man being dragged by his feet behind a carriage, his head bumping up and down on the ground, and they lynched him. These are the things that we saw. But I know you've talked to many other women, African women, and today is not the first time you are hearing about what these people have done to us. My call for reparations should be one that is at the tip of the tongue of every African. And I'm still amazed that so many of you are so complacent about this fight. Two sisters. My mother was my father's third marriage. His first wife died, and he married another woman who actually cheated on him, and he divorced her, and then he married my mother. My mother was much younger than him. But my mother died when I was just 6 years old. Now, I'm going to tell this story because perhaps it might shed some light on some remarks and ideologies I had later in life. But at some point when my mother was alive, she realized that my father had a mistress. And he was taking care of that mistress and her children. And my mother did not fight with that woman. She invited the woman to the house.
Interesting.
And she was friendly with her. And when my mother died, That woman helped to care for me and my sisters. My sisters were Loretta and Eloise. And Eloise, my goodness, she was smart. She was a student of our history. Well, unfortunately, I lost my father when I was still quite young. I was in the 4th grade. And I was the oldest of my 3 sisters. Now, I had other siblings from my father's first marriage. And when my father died, my half-brother put my sisters and I out of our house. Where were we to go? We were considered Creole. We were going to be raised as the creme de la creme of the Black community. We actually held ourselves apart from the other Black folk who were not quite as cultured. We were to be educated and we were to comport ourselves in a particular manner. But that was not to be. I went to one of my father's barns and I got 3 of his mules and I sold them from out of under my brother. And I used that money and I rented a place for my sisters and I to stay. And I had to go to work to figure out how to take care of my sisters and myself. And I went from my very comfortable life to the life of those Black people that I had
hopefully not looked down upon.
I had been raised to look down upon, because you must study the history of the Creoles. And there's still some of you today who think you are Creoles and so much better. These divisions, these things they put in our minds as though our lot is not all the same. I scrubbed floors. Can you imagine?
Must have been a humbling experience.
Looking for a job. And there would be Black girls and women lined up. And these white women would come and examine us like we were horses. They would look to see if we had calloused hands and calloused knees. And the more calloused you were, the more they wanted you to work for them, because that means you will go down on your hands and knees and clean up for them. And I remember one particular instance when I was cleaning the home of this white family. And I longed so much to take a bath like I used to in my own home. It was difficult working in those homes. Between the insults that get rained down on you by the white women, I won't call them mistresses, and then trying to avoid the lecherous stares and hands of their husbands and sons. Well, this day I had the house to myself, and I was cleaning the tub. And I just wanted to feel the sensation of just sinking my body in the water in that tub. And so I quickly ran myself a bath and I took my clothes off. And I got into that tub and oh my God, it was just heavenly. Dare you! She looked at me with more hatred than you've probably seen in anyone's eyes. It was like something worse than the most disgusting animal ever. Would you dare to wash your filthy body in a tub that my family uses? It's no surprise I was fired from that job. And as I left, just thinking of the indignity of it all, I stopped my schooling in the middle of the 4th grade, my formal education, that is. But I had gone to schools, Catholic schools, where the nuns made sure that we knew our ABCs and we knew how to read and we understood our numbers. And I never stopped reading. Now I'm going to tell this part because people are always curious about this part of my life. So we'll tell it and get it over and done with until let's really talk about my life's work. Yes, I was married. I was married 3 times. First, I married Spraggs, Josiah Spraggs. He was a Jamaican man. And I thought that union, and through that union, that my world would expand beyond America. And to some extent it did. But I was not a woman to be controlled, and that marriage didn't last very long. And no, we did not have any children. And later, I married again. I married Frank Turner. This time, we were in New York. But I was also very busy with my political work. We'll get more into that. And I will not tell any lies. I spent more of my time doing my activism, if you will, than I did being a homemaker and actually even taking care of my son. And I traveled quite a bit, and I spoke widely. And I understand that there's a price to be paid when you do these things, and I have some regrets about that. Later, I would try to make up for being such an absent mother, but it definitely took a toll on my marriage. My husband had a sense of what kind of wife he wanted to have, and I was not it, had no intentions of becoming it. And yes, that marriage ended in divorce. And later, while I was continuing with my activism work, when I had moved back to Louisiana, there's so much of my life. I cannot tell over almost 100 years in just the little time you're giving me. So you're going to go back and do some more research.
You are listening to Women and Resistance with Aya Fubera Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, where we honor the voices of women who have shaped history through courage and defiance. If you're finding these stories inspiring, take a moment to subscribe, share, and support this platform. Together, we amplify the voices that deserve to be heard. Now, back to the conversation.
And I'll tell you why you have to do this research. Because you must know what was done before you so that you understand the signs of the time that you live in now. Because let me tell you, so much of what this idiot called Trump in office now is doing is very reminiscent of what another president whose name started with a T, Truman, also did in office, getting so many Black people fired from the federal government as well. These things repeat themselves, and if you don't see the patterns, you keep falling for the same okie doke. You gotta go and study, not just to know my life, but to understand how we fought, what battles we won, where we went wrong, so you don't make the same mistakes, you understand? At any rate, I went back to Louisiana, and now I'm trying to fight for the rights of Black men locked up in these prisons. I'm telling you, they could accuse them of anything and they would just lock up these men and they were treated like animals. In Angola, you guys know that prison is still in existence. It used to be a plantation. Well, we would try to get in to see these young men and figure out what the story was and how we could assist them, and they would not let us see them. But then I realized if you were clergy, you had a better chance. And so I went through and got my certification, and I was able to start visiting some of these men to advocate for them. And I met Puerto Rican. He was 30 years younger than me. And I advocated and helped him, and eventually he was let out, and we did get married. And yes, I know a lot of people looked askance because what do these two have in common? He and I later moved to Philadelphia, where I continued with my work. He had a bad temper. When he shot someone again, I washed my hands clean of it. Listen, I had work to do. And again, I could not be the wife that he wanted to. So, 3 marriages, we've talked about it, and we're done. You guys good? Because I know you always want to get these other stories. Now, let's talk about my real life's work. But I would not move past this part without calling the name of my son, Thomas Warner. Thomas ended up going to fight for this country, although I had tried to shield him from it. I actually got him a job working overseas in Mexico, but eventually, through the drafting process, he was drafted. He did go to war. He came back. He got the GI Bill, and through it, he found his ticket into middle-class hood, if you will. And he settled down in Philadelphia. He too had this light skin as a result of this rape of my grandmother. And he passed that on to his children as well. And he's one of the reasons I moved to Philadelphia, because I was trying to make amends for being such an absent mother. Now back to my life's work. My life never fit into the narrow definitions that they gave us. I came to understand that love has to go beyond ownership. And I embraced forms of relationship that challenged Western structures. And in my later years, I openly advocated for polygamy. First, for Black men, but eventually I said, you know what? Black and men and women, it can go across gender lines. Because I was not here to conform, I was here to live truth. Now I know initially that made me very popular with the younger men. Maybe not so popular with the women. I worked in bookstores, places where ideas live, where revolution begins quietly. On a page, you have to study. Because education is the key to unlock the door of freedom. And I'm telling you, there is so much that they do not want us to know. And you've got to seek that out. And you've got to think critically. And you've got to sit down and discuss ideas. You've got to figure out how you are going to problem solve, how you are going to solve your own problems. Let me tell you the problem with the Negro. They have so shrunken our minds. Just that concept of you considering yourself and considering yourself a Negro and taking on that terminology, where it limits your creativity and you cannot think beyond the confines of who they say you are and what you're capable of. And so you are unable to imagine your own liberation outside their terms. And of course, they never intend for you to be liberated. So what are you reading? And with whom are you studying? I hear nowadays you all are so busy, engaged in, I don't even know what you guys, just these things that they give you to just sap your minds and your time.
TikTok.
You ever ask yourself, who is sending this out and for what purpose? I've dedicated my life with the 4th grade education to unlocking that door for my people. I worked with organizations that supported Black soldiers. As a matter of fact, my sister Eloise, when we had the Black soldiers and she was seeing off her man, and we saw that they had cookies and coffee and things like that for the white soldiers, but nothing for the Black soldiers. And we said, oh no, we're not going to have this. And we started to organize and bake our own cookies and make sure that our men also had something. Because even when we fought for this country did not fight for us. And that's how it started. We Africans in this country, we are the only people who have been brought here against our will and made to serve without pay. If you are listening to me and if you have not talked to this woman, you need to talk to this African. Have you heard of the African Callie House? Callie House is a forerunner in this conversation about reparations. If you can hear my voice today and you don't know Callie House, you better invite Callie House and have a conversation with her, because Callie House had the right idea. And of course, they came after her and tried to shut her down. Now, my sisters and I did move from the South. I moved so much. I moved to Los Angeles. Los Angeles didn't sit right with me. There was so much oppression against Black people. And then I moved initially with my husband to New York. And then, that didn't work out, but I stayed on in New York. And one day they're picketing and I see that they're fighting for the Scottsboro boys. Did you not talk to someone else who also had something to do with the Scottsboro boys? Who was that? Was that Fannie Lou?
Fannie Lou Hamer, yeah.
Aha! And Fannie Lou and I crossed paths many times. In fact, there is not a person who was fighting for the liberation of our people during the decades of my life with whom I did not work. You name them: Dorothy Height, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Paul Robeson, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Chokwe Lumumba. You name them. Shirley Chisholm, Jesse Jackson, and Powell. My sister that you talked to. Did you not talk with Claudia Jones? I was one of the people raising money for Claudia Jones when she was being prosecuted. And after they deported Claudia Jones, and I was still trying to make sure that we supported Claudia Jones, but the Communist Party was breaking my heart. At any rate, I joined the Communist Party when I saw how hard they were working to support the Scottsboro boys. I saw the exploitation. I saw the labor theft. I saw the injustice. And I thought the Communist Party was fighting against all of those things. I worked alongside Paul Robeson and John Henry Clark, William Patterson, Lorraine Hansberry. And of course, you must know, everywhere I went, there were these white men, black suits, starched white shirts, skinny black ties, tailing me for years. I could tell you stories about Ben Davis when he was running for office, and I galvanized the black community. I mean, I'm telling you, we had entertainers, we had intellectuals, we had physicians, we had laborers, everybody was coming out. And then the Communist Party says, well, now you're whipping up too much excitement, because they actually didn't want him to win, but he won. And then I realized they actually don't want what I want. See, when I joined the Communist Party, I was still very politically naive. Now, I had also worked with the UNIA because Marcus Garvey, you know Marcus Garvey?
Yeah.
Marcus Garvey had come to Louisiana. And the first night he was supposed to speak, well, the police stopped him from speaking. And I'm telling you that next night, I had my little pearl-handled gun right here. And I had another one in my pocketbook. And we came there and we just knew we were going to make sure that that man had his chance to speak. And when he introduced me to the concept of Africa, that we could invest in our own ships and reclaim who we are, and of course, we saw how he was railroaded. Now, within the UNIA, you always had the issues of whether men were going to take the lead in everything, what the role of the woman was going to be. And I must say, because I know I heard the criticism, especially as I got older from the younger women, they felt that I acquiesced too much to the men. But I did have a sensibility that the man was supposed to lead in certain ways. That did not diminish in any way my leadership or the leadership of any other women. But I had an understanding of how much our men were hunted down and how much they came after our men, and we needed to support them. Listen, we do not have the same fight that white women have with their men, and we can't take that on.
Could you repeat that, please?
Here's what I know. Our problems as Africans, it's not just economic. It is political, it is social, it is historical. And you cannot solve our problems without addressing the land question. So my time in the UNIA was extremely illuminating for me. And I never saw myself as a minority again, because now I could see myself as part of an African group, an African populace, beyond this notion of being a Negro in America. Now, I ultimately chose to leave the Communist Party. Understand, and there's so many gaps I can't fill in for you today, but this is why you have to study. You know, we went through McCarthyism, and you know they were hounding everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not leave because I was concerned about all of that.
Hounding.
They had been after me. Left because I could no longer support a party that I could see was not supporting the Africans.
Okay.
They were not really for our liberation. When they said, get in line with capitalism and get in line with what America is doing, and forget some of the things that we were trying to fight for, I had to make a decision. And so I turned in my letter of resignation. Well, lo and behold, here comes the FBI. And I sat down with them and they said, name your price. Because they thought I was going to give them some names or give them some information. And I said, I wasn't kicked out of the party. I resigned. And no, I have no information to give you. I went on to found the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women. There are, again, a lot of gaps in between this. A lot of pain. Of course, I had my son. Of course, I got divorced, all of those things. At some point, I lost my sister, Eloise, and that was heart-wrenching. Eloise was the one who kept us moving, kept us studying. She was brilliant. There was an opportunity for one of us to sit down with Einstein, and they chose Eartha Kitt. No, nothing against Eartha Kitt, but the mind that should have sat with Einstein should have been Eloise. We used to call her the Socrates of our group. Now, I understand we have black minds and we should probably have used that name instead of Socrates, but you understand my point. But I organized the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women. Why? Because black women were suffering in silence. Because we are the most unprotected, the most neglected person in this here United States of America. So I organized for our dignity, for our survival, for our justice. And there were many other organizations that I helped to organize as well. I was part of the meeting in Gary, Indiana, when, quite frankly, we were trying to roll out a nationalist agenda, and the men were railroading Shirley Chisholm. I was part of the group, the Sojourners, who marched, and we went to the Capitol Hill and we spread out, some to the Attorney General, some to the White House, and we had specific conversations and demands that we wanted to make about the plight of Africans in America and of our women, of our communities, and things we wanted to see changed. Part of the group that organized the petition with the UN, we charged genocide. And as I got older, I knew that I had to make my way to Africa before my time physically on earth. We raised resources and supported the Ethiopian war with Italy, against Italy. You name any independence movement in Africa, and we were studying and supporting in every way that we could because we understood our connection. Do you understand the connection, or are you still thinking with the Negro mindset? And I, even before I stepped foot on Africa physically, I returned spiritually to Africa through ancestral connection, through Yoruba tradition. And my name that I was given was Iya Luwa, Mother of the People, because I understood our roots are in Africa. And until we know that, we can never be free. So when you see the president from Ghana today going to the UN to say that the transatlantic slave trade is the gravest crime against humanity, he is building on a tradition that I was a part of, because we went to the United Nations and we named what happened to us a crime. It's not just a civil rights issue. It was a crime. We charged genocide because what was done to us, what is still being done to us, go and visit the jails in your community, is not accidental. It is systematic. The war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on every war, they come after us. Vietnam War, they come and recruit our young men and they put them on the front lines. And then when they return, they give them hardly any resources, and then they flood our communities with drugs, and then they turn around and imprison them. In the few minutes that we have, there's so much I want to cover with you, so much I have not said. Let me be clear. And this is the homework I'm giving to you. I dedicated my life to reparations. We are not begging for anything. We are demanding what is owed to us. And what I did through careful study, I and many others, is to document our case for reparations and the history of reparations being paid out to others. Why is it so hard? Why has it been so difficult for Africans ourselves in this country to fully embrace this concept? The United States of America owes the descendants of enslaved Africans for 400 years of unpaid labor and counting, not just talking monetarily. And this is a debt that we must fight for and reclaim. I stood with the Republic of New Africa. Let me pause here. So many of these groups that you have now, ADOS, FBA, so many of the names. I'll say this. In my day, what we knew for sure is that you had to be a part of an organization. But we tried to be disciplined with our organizing, with think tanks, with actually studying, with coming up with plans. Now, there were always people infiltrating, and the FBI always had ways to try and derail what we were working on. There were always people being arrested and trumped up charges and things of that nature. That probably would never end. But if you are not a part of an organization, what are you doing? So now, for these people who are saying that they are for reparations, but who have not studied the history of the reparations movement, who don't even know my name or know the arguments that were put out before now, some of this very, what is the word you people use now? Grifters?
Colorful characters.
Opportunists. You must go back and study. And there are still people who worked with me who walk this earth that you can go and sit at their feet. I stood with the Republic of New Africa, and I want to just quickly share with you in just a couple of minutes I know that we have left, the pledge that we used to share. They actually got some land in Mississippi. They were growing things and building their own community. And then, of course, the white government comes in and tries to attack them. And they hunkered down. And by the time it was all said and done, one white officer was dead. None of the black members of the Republic of New Africa were dead. But they arrested 11 of them, including a teenage boy. And they charged them with all kinds of things, arms and murder and all of that. And of course, they convicted most of them. And by the time they, had to mortgage their land and resources and all of that just to pay for legal representation, they lost everything. But not quite, because the ideas lived on with the people and just spread out. But this was the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the Republic of New Africa, to defend her land, to give my life if necessary, and to fight for the freedom and sovereignty of Black people. They were still using Black. I would eventually make my way to Africa. I went to Ghana for the funeral of Kwame Nkrumah. And while I was there, one of the chiefs, knowing the expanse of the work that I've done, they bestowed on me the honorific, and we went through the ritual, Queen Mother. Of course, I'd already been known as Queen Mother, because even here in the United States, at one point when I was in New York, we had African students who were just starving, had nothing to eat. And I created a little place, and I would just have some soup and just some food, and they could come and at least get one meal. And they would call me Queen Mother. So I was already a Queen Mother. But they gave me that honorific. Now, I never changed my name to my African name because Moor, of the Moors. So I'm already African.
True.
My name was already African. He stood amongst the giants of my lifetime, whether they were educated or had to quit school like I did. The Mary Church Terrells, and I could tell you stories about when Mary Church Terrell would put her nose in the air. But we had to work through some of those issues, and we did. And we worked together on matters that affected us all. I lived, like I said, nearly a century, and I never stopped working. I never stopped speaking. I never stopped teaching. And those who know me as the mother of reparations. I had no fear for words, and I had an intense love for my people. Reparations is a right. There are some things out there. I would say if you want to study, there are interviews that I've done. Go and hear my own words from myself. I did not write my own biography. There is a book that was written about me by Ashley Farmer. I would say that you can use it as an entry point to go and learn more about me. Don't just take it as like a Bible on me. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm also featured in I Dream a World. And this is an iconic picture of me, which is also the picture that was used on the cover of the book. Now, I'm going to end. I've already given you some homework. But I'm going to end with some more homework. For you see, I never amassed much worldly goods. Lived in a small apartment for many years, especially towards the end of my life. And then I was in a nursing home. And all of my books and ephemera, I loved Malcolm. He was a son to me. I tried to make sure that the people remembered him and his sacrifice. But when you look at the picture that they have of me and you ask, where are my things? I wonder, because my books are not in an archive. My writings are not in an archive in one place where you can find them. My jewelry, my pictures, all of the history that I collected for decades just kind of poof. I guess people took what they chose to. And so my homework to you is you must be your own archivist, because this racist country in which you live and this racist world in which we live often does not see our lives as worthy of documentation. We must tell our stories and we must preserve our stories. So do you keep an archive? What are your plans to preserve that archive? Do you have older people in your life? What will you do to preserve their archives so that it passes on from generation to generation? There are so many like me who lived and had stories of our existence, things that can help us make a case, and those documents do not exist. Sometimes when we have to do research on ourselves, we now have to go to the FBI to see how much surveillance they did to get information on ourselves. So do your own documentation. Keep your own archives, because today you say Black Lives Matter. I would say African lives, African history, African culture, African existence. All of it not just matters. It is essential for us to remember and keep the connections for our liberation. Otherwise, we're constantly starting and restarting and never finishing. You understand me?
Yes.
Uhuru.
Allah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming through. And yes, if it's not already dawned on us, you've just underscored the point that education is liberation. And I think everybody has heard. And we thank you for coming through. For those who is their first time here, my co-host Ayafubera Nele Esquire normally outlines the life of whoever we decide to showcase in the week. And today it's been Queen Mother Moore. And I think you will all agree she's done a fantastic job of depicting what her life was. So we thank you for coming through again, giving us one of your stirring performances. Next week, it will be the turn of Victoria Santa Cruz. Who she is, what she's about, we'll all find out in the course of next week. Before then, I would also like to thank everyone that has contributed to either through super chats in the course of this entire series and African News Review. It's been heaven sent. So thank you. And again, going by the theme of Queen Mother More, you saw she gave 75 years to the struggle. 75 good years. She's the thread that runs from emancipation through to the Million Man March. And for that, we do thank you. Thank you. So until next week, final thoughts to Queen Mother More?
We are Africans, and when we unite, there is nothing that we are not able to accomplish. And again, in the words of our people, I say,
freedom, 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 freedom. So that said, until next week again, when we shall be hearing from Victoria Santa Cruz, good night and God bless. That is it for this episode of Women and Resistance. Thank you for joining us in amplifying the voices of women who challenged injustice and changed the course of history. Be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. Together, remember, we honor the past, act in the present, and shape the future. Until next time, stay inspired and stay in resistance.